It's 9:05 and we'll be starting our session, our webinar. Today we have an esteemed and distinguished professor, also a person with a doctorate and an entrepreneur for our NAP Investment Forum. NAP Investment Forum is a community that was developed that was started a couple of months ago by Ali, Bakas, and the team. And we have a lot of some of the most talented and brilliant and successful people from all over Pakistan in this group. And we organize webinars and we make sure that the voices of people who are doing good things for our community, in our diaspora, the voices are heard, and we create a network effect where people are able to connect with each other. And this is why NAP Investment Forum has still lasted these couple of months. I sincerely think that the quarantine has little to do with all of this. The idea is so genuine and it's so well executed that I feel it's going to continue. My name is Rihan Zahid. I'll be the moderator for today's session. Bringing about the EdTech revolution in Pakistan, this is our topic. We have with us the founder and CEO of Knowledge Platform, Dr. Mahboob Mahmood. And this entire session will be for 1 hour. We will be ending the session at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This is where I'm based in San Francisco, so we'll be ending in 1 hour. The general outline of the webinar is very simple. In the next 3 minutes, I will be giving some basic rules and outlines and some introductions. Then I will open the chat for Mr. Mahboob to present his slides and talk about the startup and his topic. And after 20 to 30 minutes, we will be entertaining questions from the audience. Now, the question and answers protocol that we're going to follow is very simple. The audience can send in their questions in the chat, and I will be entertaining and sorting those questions in order of priority and also how much information we can get out of Mr. Mahboob about the startup and his thoughts and ideas. And once we're done with that, at exactly 10, respecting everybody's time, we are going to end the session. A little about myself. I am a software engineer here in San Francisco. I do research in software language design. I'm a graduate from GIK. I have a Qaid-e-Azam medal in the highest distinction from the university. I have a lot of volunteer experience with teaching in TCS. I've clocked in more than, when I was still in Pakistan, more than 100 hours teaching in different TCF schools in Karachi, all the way from the Kati Pahari area to the site area, and even 90 area. There's all of those. It's been really interesting. And at the same time, I'm a big advocate of education technology. I have learned countless skills, really invaluable skills through online education. And before I was here, I was working in a corporate company, a record bank user, and there, the learning experience never ends. I did courses while I was in the company, and all the solutions there within it. So it's wonderful knowing that education is a lifelong journey, and that I'm, an advocate and a living, breathing example of that. Our esteemed guest and speaker today, Mr. Mahboob Mahmood, has a doctor. He's a doctor of law, JD, from Columbia University. He also has a master's of art from Johns Hopkins University. He has worked as an adjunct professor at INSEAD University, where he ended his 7-year tenure in 2012. He has been a trustee at Institute of International Education. He's been an attorney at law at New York State Unified Court System. And currently, his, 20 years experience in his startup, the Knowledge Platform, is absolutely, I would say, one of the most notable features of Mr. Mahboob, given that how much dedication and time he has put into this. And today we will know all about it and his experience and his thoughts and ideas and his philosophy around education, and why we all should be really excited about education technology and its leveraging power in Pakistan. So without further ado, I welcome Mr. Mahboob Mahmood, and let's start the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you everybody for joining. I want to try to go through my presentation quite quickly because I've got a lot of ground to cover, and I hope you don't mind if I speed through it so that we have as much time as possible for discussion. It will take me about half an hour. I do have two components to what I talk about. About 60% of the time, I will talk about education, K-12 education in Pakistan and EdTech in Pakistan, and then about 40% of the time I'll talk about what we are doing. Can you see my screen, Rayan?
Yes, I'll be sharing it.
Okay, great. So I'll get started. I'm going to zip through this. I hope you don't mind, but if I'm going too fast, let me know, or if I'm going too slow, you can let me know as well.
Sure.
Okay. So Pakistan has about 73 million kids who are of K to 12 age, and unfortunately 22.8 million are not in school, 21.6 or so are in private sector, and 28.7 million are in the public sector. This was an index put together by UNICEF. They've stopped doing it because people were not happy with where their countries came out. But as you can see that from looking at net enrollment rate, adult literacy, and so on, Pakistan ranked very, very low. And this is really unfortunate because we had a written text as far back as about 4,000 years ago. So we should have been doing much better than countries like Mozambique and Benin, which have had much less history of literary achievement. This is a chart which shows the dropout rate in public schools. So if 10 kids join class 1, only 30 kids will end up joining class 10. Massive drop-off rate. And why do kids drop off? Now, Pakistan has evolved somewhat in the sense that if you are a child of a bricklayer or a poor farmer, chances are you won't be able to get an education. But if but there's a wide segment of population that is able to get an education. So the general impression is that the biggest reason is financial, and that is a very, very, very big reason. Another reason is social, girls can't work. But the biggest reason is kids are not interested. And we have certainly seen in our 7 years of work in Pakistan that the biggest factor is the motivation of the child. If a child is not doing well in school, if they're not being engaged in school, they will drop off. It's human nature. Now, if we look at what's happening in the public-private sector, the private sector is growing at about 12.7%. That was the average for the last 3 years that have been tracked, whereas the public sector was growing at a little bit under 3%. And so we project by about 2025, the private sector will be bigger than the public sector. So on the one hand, we've got a depressing story of how many kids are out of school, what is drop-off rate, how we rank in terms of education globally. But the private sector is picking up in an interesting way. Today, the government spends, all the governments combined, the federal and the provincial, spend about 840 billion rupees on education per year in the K-12 sector. And now that has already been eclipsed by the private sector. Very difficult to get numbers on tuitions, but tuitions are around 300 million, and then school fees are around 540 million or so. And so what is driving the private sector? It's quite an amazing story. We have about 25,000 education entrepreneurs. So of course we know the big names, we know Beacon House, we know TCF and so on, but they're really at the top of the pyramid. There's a vast number of small school owners, people who are doing it on a non-profit basis as well, that form this vast segment of the private education sector. And now they run about 150,000 schools and educate 21.6 million kids. That makes it one of the biggest private sector segments anywhere in the world. There are also almost over 900,000 teachers that work in that sector. I'll give you a story of this gentleman who started this school, and who had already started schools when we were doing pilots. So Iftikhar Saab, he was a son of a sixth child of a tailor. All his brothers and sisters were not educated, but he had a passion for education. So the parents pooled together money, put him in school. At age 15, he started a tuition center. And when we met him, he had 3 centers in a chicken shed you can see at the back over there. But the results were very even. So we kind of got engaged in the 2015-2016 year with him. And his results were very even. And for these small schools, profit margin is really, if 2 kids drop out of a class, that class becomes uneconomic. So retention rate and of course enrollment, new enrollments is very, very critical to their survival. And because his results were uneven, there was a lot of turnover both at the teacher level and at the student level. So we came in, we used our solution, which I'll describe in more detail later, and we helped him get both better results and more consistent results, so his retention improved and his enrollment improved. And then by last year, he had set up 13 schools with revenue increase as well. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to him in this post-corona period, because at this level, only 15 to 20% of school fees are being paid. So the whole sector, that robust sector that you've seen we built up, is in a crisis situation. It may also represent an opportunity, because if you deconstruct what a 2,000 rupee fee means, school fee per month, typically there will also be a tuition fee, which would be another 2,000 rupees. So from a parent's perspective, they're paying 2,000 in fees, they're paying 2,000 in tuition. They're also paying about 1,500 in books, uniforms, snacks, and so on. And then they're paying another 1,500 rupees just in transport alone. Now that's an interesting statistic. Just think about it, that if a kid is going to, high-end school and they're paying 20,000 or 30,000 rupees fees a month, their tuition, their transport bill may be 5,000 rupees, so quarter. But if you're a kid who's at the lower level, your transport bill is often as much as or equal to your school fees. So we've got a fairly inefficient usage of current spending, because you spend on school fees, then you spend on tuition, and you're spending on transportation. Obviously, from an EdTech point of view, there may be ways that we can improve this. I believe that we can actually, through education technology, deliver better learning outcomes at a lower cost. Now, the good news is that, as you know, internet penetration in Pakistan is growing, so that by the time in about 2025, we'll have over close to 48 million kids who will have some kind of internet access at home. However, keep in mind that education technology is not like ordering an Uber or ordering food. You need to have device access for fairly long periods of time. You need high levels of bandwidth. And so I estimate that there may be only about 1 million kids who have a regular device access and are doing okay in the corona period. So we've got a very big population below that may not have regular device access. The inverted black triangle is an interesting one. I call it latent access, meaning the parent may have a device, but that doesn't translate to regular use by the kid. And then there's a much wider use of television. So as we evolve EdTech in Pakistan, one of the things we have to really look at is how do we solve the infrastructure problem? And also another thing we have to look at is how do we leverage TV, latent access of parents, and so on, and also ultimately, obviously, really solve this device issue. And of course, with that comes device financing. Now, in terms of who's the EdTech players, there's an association of EdTech participants. Not everybody's part of the association, but these are some of the members in the association. And later on, if anyone's interested, I can give you a link to that association. So it's quite interesting that there's quite a high degree of collaboration within the industry at this stage. I believe that technology will revolutionize education in Pakistan. If you look at our base product, we're selling it at 100 rupees a child a month. So when you think of a parent who's spending about 2,000 rupees of fees and a total of about 7,000 spend, 100 rupees a child a month is quite affordable. Now that doesn't include the device, but as you see that we don't need a solution right now that every kid has a device. But even if you include that, there is a ability to afford, to reach, to be able to get to a large number of kids at a very low price point. There's also, of course, a richness, cost, speed of delivery of new content, and then finally artificial intelligence using new. Sorry? Okay. Now the question is, the question is when I'm getting some. Hello? Incredible. There's so much out there. Can you get? Use nature to be on the winning side. Can you chat? Yeah. Thank you. So the question is, are we ready? Are we ready in Pakistan when? And so one question is, when a revolution takes place, there was a very nice book written on Shah's fall called Shah of Shahs, and in that the writer argued that a revolution at the first point is a psychological thing. When people are ready, at one point people start coming out in the central square in Tehran and they felt ready. The revolution took a year or so after that, but psychologically they could see a life after the Shah. So there's a psychological moment. And then there's an inflection point that if you get the point right and people start, in education technology goes into mainstream, it can then start scaling very substantially. Now, if you had asked me 4 months ago whether Pakistan would be ready for an education revolution, I would say we are not there yet, and maybe we'll be there in 2 years from now. But if you ask me today, I'm completely convinced that we have reached that inflection point. And really the reason is COVID. So a lot of things have started happening, a lot more EdTech companies have started coming on board, schools have started pushing it, government has started an initiative called Teleschool where art content is also displayed, writers are talking about it. We launched a virtual campus right after Corona that we can set up a school for you within 3 days. We did one Facebook advertisement for a few thousand rupees and we got 1,000 requests. And so far we've enrolled about 330 of those schools. So, we have come to a stage where education technology pre-COVID was a marginal frontier kind of activity. And now it's gone into the heart of the education enterprise. Now, all of this, how it's going to play out, how we're going to help Iftikhar Saab in the future is uncertain. But what is quite certain is, number one, people are psychologically ready for it. Schools are ready. Parents are ready. And students are ready. Teachers are beginning to use it. Experience has gone up quite substantially. And people recognize that this is now here to stay. However, we have a long ways to go. And one big constraint is that we have, maybe 25 or so companies that are seriously in it. There are maybe another 20, 30, 40 companies that provide some kind of little bits of content. But maybe I'd be generous in saying that the funding in equity funding. By contrast, India has more than 420 serious companies in this space, and they've received about $3 billion of a little bit under $3 billion of equity funding so far. So a little bit about us now, and then I'll open it up to questions. So our mission is to revolutionize both access and quality. We want to leverage technology, also content, and we want to work with the education system. Education is a complex business. It's not just a matter of putting out an app there, but really working with students, with teachers, with schools, with the government, and so on to transform education. A little bit of background. The company was started, as Rayan mentioned, about 20 years ago. We went into 2 sectors. One was IT market research. So our clients were Google and IBM and Microsoft and Hewlett Packard and all the, pretty much all the big boys. And we covered about 600 companies in Asia. We sold that to Forrester Research in 2011. We also went into compliance e-learning, where we developed about 1,800 courses in mainly compliance and risk management subjects, sold that to Thomson Reuters in 2012. And then we went into EdTech in Pakistan to begin with. We developed a learning management system in Pakistan. We exported it to China. So I'm very proud to say that we're one of the few companies that actually transferred technology from Pakistan to China. And we also have a venture in the Philippines. I'll be talking about our Pakistan venture from now on. So basically, Pakistan company had been set up a long time ago. in 2003, but until 2013 or so, it was just serving as a back end for whatever we were doing. And we had developed, by 2013, we had developed 7 learning management systems. So we had a very strong handle on developing technology for education. In 2013, 2014, we started experimenting in Pakistan. It took a long time. We first worked in 4 government schools, then we expanded into other schools, then 10 schools, and then finally we launched something called LearnSmart Pakistan, which was the first free e-learning platform in the country. And then the next year in 2017, we launched LearnSmart Classroom, which was a platform that we licensed to schools that was for pay. We closed our first round of funding in last year. We had targeted about 250 million. We ended up raising about 329 million rupees. And the lead investors, we're very proud to say, one is Beacon House, which is the largest school system in Pakistan, private sector school system in Pakistan, also one of the largest anywhere in the world. JS Bank, which is a conglomerate in the banking and insurance and finance industry, and Laxon Venture Capital, which has been a terrific supporter on the venture capital side. We just launched a second round of 250 million rupee convertible bridge financing. I'll talk very briefly about that at the end of this, and if people are interested, then we can have a follow-up conversation. So, these are some of the key investors. In addition to investing, they're also helping us in various ways. Laxon, for example, the family that leads that group also owns McDonald's, so we are going to be doing something in B2C space with McDonald's. JS Bank has been helping us on various financing programs, and then Beacon House, we are the preferred provider of EdTech solutions for Beacon House. We've also formed a pretty good set of relationships with particularly the Federal Directorate of Education. We did a joint venture with JAZZ, which was one of the seminal programs in the government EdTech sector space, where we took on 75 girls' schools run by the Federal Directorate of Education and implemented math, science, and English. I had some results further on, excellent results, really, really interesting program. 70% of the average age of the teachers was 45 years, and 70% had never used a laptop. And we've had a terrific success in that program. With the State Bank of Pakistan, we've done a financial literacy program that has gone very well. And then also with Ministry of Science and also the UK government and so on. So very good relationships. JAZZ has been a very strong supporter. We won a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Award. We were the only one from a Muslim country to win it. I'll describe that in a bit of detail. And we've been working for the last 2 years with Aga Khan Education Board. I'll describe that relationship in a little bit more detail as well. So right now we have about 109 people, mostly concentrated in Islamabad, but we have folks in 10 other cities and towns, and they're evenly distributed between tech, content and engagement. Very strong team. Folks have been with us a long time, very committed, excellent board dynamics as well as a strong advisory panel. Our basic solution is on the tech side is a blended learning solution. After we did lots of trials, we realized that in Pakistan, insofar as you're serving schools, there's often electricity is a problem, let alone internet bandwidth. So what we did was we put our system on one laptop and said, let's try to squeeze out as much use as we can from one laptop. So we put one laptop in a school with the projector, and we gave clickers to kids. So the one CPU is processing and capturing data on 40 kids at a time, and then kids rotate. So you end up getting 400 or 500 kids using the platform at the most basic level. Everything is loaded on the laptop, but it's later on synchronized with the cloud. Had to spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure out this cloud component, but we managed to nail it. So school started with one little hardware kit, and because we advise that don't spend on hardware, don't spend on infrastructure until you actually get good use of it. Because I think one of the big problems in the way we spend in Pakistan and most countries is that we misallocate spending. So this idea of spending on tuitions and then spending on education as well, and then spending on buying laptops and hardware and so on and not using it well. We wanted to create an efficient system so that you don't have to spend that much. Then schools started saying, okay, this is working for us. So they started putting it onto a LAN so that they could then distribute it across all their classrooms. Of course, because the data was synchronized, if somebody had a laptop at home or a tablet or a phone, they could also use it at home. When when COVID happened, the situation kind of flipped. Schools shut down, but then because we already had a cloud-based learning management system, we opened it up as virtual campus, and we had very good take-up on that. So idea was that you first bring an entire school on board online, and later on when schools open, you can use the same system in the classroom as well. The system has won awards, international awards, and been used in a number of countries now. We've invested a lot in how we architect our content. We break everything down into a very detailed skills taxonomy. For every subject, we create about 100 to 200 skills, and then we create videos and games and assessments for each skill, divide that into lesson plans. We have proficiencies for each one, and then we've had a very successful adaptive assessment engine, which is kind of a rules-based engine. And now we have developed, I know over 2 years, but we have not yet implemented an AI-based recommendation engine. But it's working very well and been trained very rigorously. One of the things we also do is give a lot of data at the school system level, district level, teacher level, student level, and so on. So we really have immense amount of data, and we provide a lot of data to our constituents, and that helps build up confidence in use of education technology and gives visibility. It's quite amazing how much information EdTech can provide, and of course at the end of the day, it's not only just data, but using AI, it's actionable data. So people, you don't only give them a skill that tell them what they're weak at, you actually recommend to them what they can do. In terms of the content, we have content mainly for math, science, and English, grades 1 to 10, although we started grades 6 to 10, so we are still working on the primary side content development. Pakistan is a very complex education system. There are numerous, there's the provincial boards, then the education, the federal board, and in fact, there are 40 examination boards in the country. We cover content for 29 of them. We also covered 167 textbooks. We are not ready yet, and this is not only true of Pakistan, even in China, it's the same. We are not ready yet for a true EdTech revolution where your textbook independent. So the content we provide is linked to textbooks. So we cover about 167 textbooks, all the major textbooks in the country. Content is provided in English and Urdu, and right now it covers skills. We also capture about 100 data points for each kid, which is being fed into the training for our AI system. In terms of extracurricular, because at the end of the day, we really want to bring a revolution, not just by helping kids pass what they're doing in terms of exams and the current subjects. We developed a story-based approach and games-based approach to financial literacy. It's gone up very well. The number of downloads is now 90,000. That makes it the number one education digital game in Pakistan of all time. And we've already had 300,000 kids trained. Bill and Melinda Gates had put out an RFP saying, how can we teach critical thinking skills to kids in emerging markets? And so we just give us a 2-pager, don't tell us who you are. So we put this 2-pager together, and we said, we're not going to talk about robotics and coding and stuff. We're going to talk about the fact that Pakistan's bee population is 10% of what it could be given the fauna. And we have 700 native species of birds. So we're going to teach kids about systems thinking and problem solving through the environment. So that's just a very baby program that we started, and I'm very proud to say somebody's also given us some land where we're actually building out our first center. This is the only thing that we're doing that is not virtual right now. later on we hope that once we get stronger in it, we can really cascade out environmental literacy. At a personal level, I feel this is the most important subject you can learn today, both in terms of saving our planet and also in terms of problem solving and complex thinking. And another interesting thing is we worked with some kids from rural areas. They get it faster than kids from urban areas. They're better at working with their hands. They're better at working with the soil. So, we talk about a uniform curriculum in Pakistan. Why do kids drop out? Coming back to that earlier question, because they flunk. It's not because even if kids are flunking in school. I was not good in sports. My sisters and my father was fantastic. I stopped playing. I later on, went into other things like karate and triathlon where I didn't have to pick up a ball and a bat. But the thing is, if you're not doing well at things, you flunk out. So let's try to create, when we're talking about uniform curriculum, let's try to give the rural kids a hand up. Let's try to say, let's engage more with nature and build things and grow things, but also learn about science and math and English and language through them. Now, in terms of our solution, we've got two solutions right now. Like I said earlier, one is LearnSmart Pakistan, which is the B2C, and then LearnSmart Classroom, which is B2B, and later on we are planning to launch TeachSmart Pakistan as well. We've had very nice growth. And especially on the B2B side, it took us 2.5 years to hit about 450 schools. And then it took us 60 days to sign on another 330 schools. And we've had 80,000 kids. This data is a little bit older, so we've got a few more kids now. But we've had terrific growth rate from the coronavirus period. We are going to go through a very turbulent period over the next 6 months in Pakistan because schools are opening, not opening. It's going to be unclear. But clearly what's happened is teachers are using our system. Our usage has gone up. The demands they're making, they want to use more applications. Our tech team, we were building out application. We had to completely stop and just serve the burgeoning needs that were coming out from teachers and so on, which is a great actually situation to be in because it means that people are actually using using platform not in a passive way but in an active user and student and teacher driven way. In terms of our impact, we have very, very good impact because we break everything down into such micro scales, and we, especially at the bottom percentiles of education, we get very good results. In this program that we ran in 75 girls' schools in Islamabad, we got over 60% improvement in math and English combined, and over about 1.5 years. So I think, we are very confident that what we're doing actually works and delivers great results. So now, we had started off because we were in Islamabad in that area, but now we've started spreading. We've just set up a couple of folks in Karachi, and we're trying to really bring a very good education at about 100 rupees a child. Now, an interesting thing happened. Schools started using our brand, LearnSmart Classroom and Knowledge Platform, kind of as an Intel Inside brand. So now we're doing more and more things where we are actually becoming a B2B2C program where we actually reach out and we give them brochures and videos and so on. And then we're also working with some large school networks to spread more quickly. So just within the school networks we're already working, we have the potential to scale out to 2 million kids. Okay. I'm going to speed up. Beacon House is one of them. They're also an investor. So we've gotten about 240 of their schools on board, and we're trying to bring the others. Aga Khan Education Board is the number one. There are 40 examination boards in Pakistan. 2 are private sector. Aga Khan is one of them. It's the leading. So for 2 years, we've been working on them, and now we're going to be signing a deal where we bring their content on board and we start serving it to their 233 schools and about 150,000 students. Our LearnSmart Pakistan, which is our B2C, is now we are making a paywall on the LearnSmart Pakistan, so that will dip in usage, but we're also making our education platform free. We've had a lot of success with the education platform, gaming platform. We've done a lot of things with fun games, and 97% of the kids adopt games very quickly. And I'm very proud to say that UNDP has now agreed to play games And State Bank of Pakistan is using education games, and they've had terrific success with it. So I think there's a lot of room to go, but we make education fun for kids. And what's nice is that even large state organizations are using it. I'm going to speed up very quickly. So the LearnSmart Pakistan Pay for will also be a platform where tutors can come and give content and use our content to teach kids. And then finally, to solve the device issue, we are doing a device solution as well. And then working with LUMS, we are doing a TeachSmart Pakistan that will come next year, where we start giving content for the teachers. One of the interesting things is that we get consistently high demand. Number one, for just subject matter expertise. Teachers don't have enough subject matter expertise. In terms of our user growth, we ended up last year with about 131,000 non-paying users and 48,000 paying users. We expect that maybe we'll have 400,000 non-paying users and 71,000 paying users. In fact, our paying users may be higher than what we expect, and our non-paying may be a bit lower. We expect that we'll end up breaking even when we get to about 500,000 paying users about 2022. So in terms of the bridge note, if somebody's interested, I don't want to spend too much time on this right now, but we're doing a $1.5 million bridge financing until we do our next formal equity financing next year, and we can give the details of that. I just want to conclude by saying everyone's familiar with Byju's. Byju's did 13 funding rounds so far. They have an $8 billion valuation. If you discount that back to the size of Pakistan, that's about, you'd have a $1.2 billion company in Pakistan. And if you then discount it further for risk and the like, you're probably looking at a $500 million company. So there's somebody who can become a $500 million company in Pakistan. And we expect and hope that we can be that company. But more importantly than that, we hope that we can really help dynamize education throughout.
That's wonderful.
Okay,
it shows that.
I'm sorry, I was about 3 minutes off my track.
That's good. I think your presentation was absolutely gobsmacking. I am speechless by everything that you have shared. It shows that there's a company that has been functioning under leadership such as yours has fostered so much in the past 20 years. It really reflects in every single slide that you showed. Every one of that was just packed with information, and there's so much to digest right now. Education is really complex, and there's so many different variables that impact it. There's the political aspect, there's the social aspect, there's the economic aspect, and then all of these are always just really dynamic and changing. And Pakistan hasn't had a really stable past, and doesn't have a stable present. And to the kind of numbers that you've shown, it seems like you have been absolutely plowing through every challenge that has come your way. But I'm sure that the journey wouldn't have been easy. Would you want to share something about some of the difficulties or some of the the most challenging aspects about this? And
you see, I think things have changed a lot, in the sense that even 3 months, 6 months principle or to convince a parent to start using EdTech. So in that way, coronavirus has been really helpful to us. People now understand that this must happen, so things have become much easier for us. When we started, people would just say, this is not for Pakistan, and then they started saying, okay, this is for rich schools, or this is for people who are just very forward thinking and so on. But now it's really changed. So I think now we're going to see a big acceleration. However, now the challenge will be over the next year. Like just for example, we had a couple of very big tenders that we were working on, Ministry of Science and Technology and DFID. Those got killed. So basically the economics of the education system, at least in the short term, has been really severely dented. And my sense is that many schools will shut down, especially the kind of schools that I talked about, 2,000, 3,000 rupee schools, because they don't have the wherewithal to support, to continue going. Things will change. And I think if you then look at the economic structure, this thing of paying 2,000 rupees in fees and 2,000 rupees in tuition doesn't make sense. You can spend your money more wisely and get a better outcome. And obviously EdTech, we feel EdTech can play a role so that you can bring the overall cost structure down. So we feel that the secular conditions, economic conditions that COVID has created will benefit us and the whole industry. But the way it will happen and whether we can survive the turmoil and, who will win and who will lose, that's very much unclear because, everything is in flux at this stage. We don't know whether we're having exams. Some schools are opening, but they're only opening for math, science, English, which interestingly helps us. So there are many uncertainties. But certainly things have become much easier that people want to now adopt. So that that adoption willingness, that has been
point. Right. So you believe the inflection point is there. So we have a few questions from the audience, and the audience wants to know that are you collaborating with other EdTech startups in Pakistan and also nonprofits like TCF, DIL? And if you have, what is the outcome? How's the response?
Yeah, so this ILM association is quite unique in Pakistan that people actually work quite well together and we collaborate a lot. And in fact, recently we've made a bid to UNICEF to get a project to do education content for the government on the teleschool because, 3 of us gave content that was used in teleschools and now they want to expand that program. And we were very honored that we were selected as the leader in that consortium, but actually 5 other EdTech companies came behind us. So that's a very nice thing to see. I hope it really continues in that direction because I think we have you've seen the India numbers compared to Pakistan. The model for VC in America and India is now, win or burn, right? It doesn't matter. You can develop lots of content technology. If it doesn't work, you throw it out. But, Pakistan is a very poor country. We're not going to get that much money. So we have to work together. The other thing we've also started talking to the government about is let's put a public-private partnership together. So we're also one of the leaders in discussing that. Government has accepted that let's put a public-private partnership together. Now that means regulatory changes because Pakistan has public-private partnership laws, but they've been written with the view of power plants in mind, not tech companies. Right. So there's a long road to go. Hopefully we can get there because, the government mentality is to be a deliverer of education services, and it's not going to work. Given the pace at which we are working, the things we are doing, they'll never get there. So I hope we can.
I think it does. Just from a historic perspective, it doesn't help that all of Pakistan's laws are just basically we copied it based on the British laws, and then now we're just trying to deal with it, trying to amend it, and the legislation is so hard. And to have something we didn't create and then having to work with that, I guess there is we don't have the muscle memory in regards to that, and I think it's a challenge for the government to just catch up with the private sector. But again, I would emphasize, what about nonprofits? Are you collaborating with nonprofits like TCF or like KBS?
Yes, we have collaborated with a bunch of nonprofits, Idara Talim Gahi, DIL, various others. They've been pretty good. I think there's the true collaboration between nonprofits and EdTech has yet to bear fruit, not only with us, but generally, because the general orientation of nonprofits is to look at us as a donor, and we don't have the affordability to do things on a donor kind of model. So I think that whole conversation and relationship has to mature a little bit more.
Right. I think 100 rupees.
I happen to think that, to be honest, the non-profit model is just not, for example, TCF, they build these beautiful buildings, but, I did some analysis in a couple of basti, they're educating 2% of the kids in that basti. So I've been saying, let's put an EdTech center in your basti, in your school, and let's become a force multiplier for the whole basti. So I think even if you think of architecture and space usage, what's going to happen is we're going to have hub and spokes. You need physical space, but these high quality spaces must serve many more people, and technology should be there. So my conversation with them is we should be serving 90% of the kids in the basti, not 2%. You know what I mean? If I take the best 2% of any population, even with the crappy, excuse my language, even with the crappy education delivery, I can get a good result. My sister runs great schools, and she says, I asked her, what's the secret to running great schools? She says, just interview lots of kids and only take the best.
Oh my. So I think the force multiplier that you're talking about is very interesting thing. Here in the Bay Area, I was collaborating with a person who was trying to provide education to minorities, disenfranchised communities here. You already know there's been so much protest and so much talk about how do we leverage people who have been systematically oppressed, and how do we bring them up? And education is a big part of it. And in computing, I think what we talked about, how 40 kids can use one PC. It's for the viewers out there, the formal term is N computing. It is absolutely game-changing. Things like using technology such as cloud and N computing is definitely a key aspect of being accessible and inclusive to everyone. And I do not really see that happening in a lot of nonprofits. Definitely, I think if people are looking for just on a donation-based model, it's very difficult. Like, the economics need to make sense, and I understand that. But at the same time, I think if there are any serious efforts to create collaboration, I think there are a lot of donors out there who can sustain this for a few decades. Even people. A very good example is that just within the GT community, just recently, they raised like $250,000 in the TCF school, and they raised enough funds to sustain it for 3 years.
Yeah. So I think we are in an interesting situation that if you look at, for example, when we went into China in 2016 and Pakistan now, in China, the hardware and infrastructure problem had already been solved. Parents had devices or they could afford to buy devices. So when EdTech solutions started coming in, they got adopted very quickly. Payments, bandwidth, hardware, solved, right? So the ability for software and content to scale was more. But in Pakistan, on the chart I've shown you, actually we have problems on payments, we have problems on bandwidth, we have huge problems on hardware, right? So until these problems are solved, we won't be able to move as quickly as we'd like. But so we are in a flip situation. Content and software is moving faster. But ultimately, I do believe that the main promise of EdTech will be, look, whatever I managed to achieve in life was because I went to schools in Pakistan. My whole success has been because I went to schools in Pakistan. There are 8 million Pakistanis overseas who benefited. There are about 8 million Pakistanis internally who are doing well. Until we start giving more money, and it's not only the rich guys who can afford a TCF school for $250,000, it's that if I can give 100 rupees and I can connect with my village, I can see the results, I can give it to a teacher who I respected. This is the true connectivity, because ultimately the problem will be, so we've got level 1 problem, software and content and teacher and practice and all. Level 2 problem actually, which is the infrastructure and bandwidth and financing. The level 3 problem is bringing $5 billion a year into education in Pakistan by engaging the whole diaspora and the wealthy Pakistanis to give directly into, in transforming education in Pakistan. But I don't see the government, government has been struggling, they can't with their budgets. It's a mess. So ultimately, if we want to solve this problem, it's all of us. I hope.
So you showed me that slide of you showed us a slide of India and how much financing happening in EdTech space. Just for the viewers, like, India had a really a huge monumental achievement. Their electrification rate was nearly 100%. That means almost all of India had some access to electricity. And once you have electricity, you've set up the infrastructure, or you've given the capacity for all sorts of hardware to come in. People can have cell phones, mobile cellular towers can be there. And people can, use computers, even if one computer is there for 40 kids, like N computing, it's absolutely wonderful. So, given the challenges here, right, how do you see you showed us the numbers, like, of how your company is going to grow in the next 5-10 years. But what do you think? What are those absolutely, I would say, what would be those wildcard issues or those variables that could really take those numbers even higher, like unexpectedly higher?
Actually, I think the one thing we need is not an EdTech guy, but a finance guy. Michael Millikan created the junk bond industry in America and completely changed how you look at business, right? Now, if you look at education as a pool, You can statistically guarantee almost that if you take a bunch of people and you give them a good education, right, you will be able to recapture, the income levels will be higher than if you don't educate them. It's not like health, because in health, your problem occurs on the back end, when incomes are declining. But with education, it's all front end. So if we had a means, a financially brilliant guy who says, or girl, hopefully, who says, I'm going to revolutionize the funding of education, both by unlocking people who contribute back, but more importantly, by figuring out ways, blockchain and so on, and capturing forward income levels, because every kid has the potential to self-finance them. After all, I went to college in the States, I got loans, I paid them off, it wasn't a problem. Right? And we're not talking about much money. So ultimately, every kid in Pakistan has the strength and power to finance themselves. Our job is to give them the tools to let that happen.
Oh yes, of course. I completely agree. And I think, given that how many e-wallets are there in Pakistan, how many bank accounts are there, just payment solutions. Like, I think we're also another verge of complete economic tool revolution, like just the tools that we have, the financial tools that we have, the availability of these resources to people. It's I think we're definitely very near to an inflection point. We might be on the tick mark. And I think this, looking at your startup, it's not a startup anymore. It's such a huge business. You've been in this for 20 years. I think there is definitely hope that things are really, there's good news.
Startup, we need funding. We need to keep growing. We are, need to figure out lots of things. So we are very much in startup mode in EdTech in Pakistan and generally. But I think that if we begin to really look at this as a wide-ranged problem set, it's got to do with curriculum, it's got to do with content technology, but also infrastructure and financing and people working together and really collaboration, which is where we've not historically been strong at, but maybe we can, I think it's possible. And what I see among folks here, there is a genuine interest in, working together, funding each other, collaborating, learning from each other. It's a fabulous thing that is happening in Pakistan and of course globally. And this will really create a lot of change in the country.
I think Knowledge Platform is a
other key interesting thing I should say is, for me, what was an eye-opener is Iftikhar Sahib. We have 25,000 education entrepreneurs. None of them are on this call. They don't speak that good English, right? They don't come to education conferences. They're not invited. My friend Nadeem Haq is here. I don't know how many people he's invited to his big EdTech conference, from people who are actually driving education in Pakistan. They've picked up the slack and they're driving it. Maybe they're not giving such a good quality, but I would submit that putting a school together is a more complex proposition than opening a McDonald's, You have to think about curriculum and teacher training and whatever, but these people are voiceless. But the beautiful thing is this industry is already there. You don't have to make the industry. The industry is already there. You have to give them some funding. You have to give them some tech. You have to give them some content. And as we've seen, that industry will start flowering and become stronger. It's much easier to power an industry that's already there.
What's your solution? How do we get all these 25,000 entrepreneurs? How do we connect them? How do we make them more noticeable in the eyes of people who want to help Pakistan have better education? How do we do that?
You see, there are many government aspects. Like, for example, these people don't get financing, they don't get tax breaks, they're being squeezed on in various ways. So at one level, there's a lot of policy changes that need that. How do we create industry? Instead of, talking about single national curriculum, let's talk about look at our existing industry and how do we strengthen that industry? It is a strong industry. The government has failed. The industry has picked up and now it's going to become stronger, and it's middle class, lower middle class people with a passion for education. So if we can give them government support, and then from our side, tech and content and all these kinds of things, infrastructure, we can bring about a transformation. We have 25,000 people who know how to do this better than you and I can do it. I cannot go to Chichavatni and open a school and make it profitable, but they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
I think when you talk, I think
one piece of advice would be that when you look at funding, also look at especially if you have an impact investment angle, look at what is the force multiplier of what people are trying to do. Are they just because, I believe that also if you can serve this industry, then you can serve the top end also. But, if you can be a force multiplier for all the tutors and school owners in the country, that will be a hugely transformative thing.
It really feels that the priorities of our government is not in line. Like you just showed the dropout rates. You showed numbers on how many people are in school. We know that Pakistan has one of the youngest populations in the entire world. Our population doubled from 20,000 to 2020. And there's so many young people who just don't have access to education. And to think of like creating a single curriculum just seems like, for what? Like we don't even have enough schools or enough coverage. We don't have enough accessibility. Even the best NGOs or non-profits that we have, even they can't cover, or they're even struggling with getting out there and just be accessible and available to the people. But I think more people should listen or should see what you're doing. I think your model is scaled really well. In this time, you've set up infrastructure. You have I would say you're a full stack educational platform. You have figured out like assessment and curriculum and hardware and software and content and how to create with government and NGOs and creating like subscription, reaching out to B2B, B2C. All this is absolutely, it's just absolutely amazing. I'm just going to enter in 2 questions. We are actually over time, but under my discussion, I wanted, if someone wants to leave this session, they can. But however, I just want to ask 2 more questions. I feel this conversation deserves another 10 minutes. And it's just so important for Pakistan and just the people here for these questions to be entertained as well. So one question is about, franchising in KP and, do you have some kind of easy way on how people can adopt this? Are you still reaching out to people and getting them excited about this? Or just reaching out and like that?
Yeah, definitely. Franchising is a model that we haven't done franchising yet, but we'd be very open to doing it. I think a key success factor in any of these, in education in particular or health also, being able to collaborate is very critical because it takes a lot of, these are complex sectors. There's any socially driven sector is complex, and it's not just a matter of implementing an app. Even if you look in United States, there's no one big company that you can say, this is the Yahoo, not Yahoo, but the Facebook of education, So this is a complex sector that takes a lot of time, a lot of investment, and ultimately a lot of collaboration. So definitely, our philosophy is that we collaborate. We try to collaborate as strongly as possible. And I think companies that will collaborate will be winners in the long term.
Right.
EdTech is also not a short-term play. It takes time to build up a brand, but if you think of the oldest brands in the world, they're Oxford and Cambridge. So the brands tend to last a long, long time. And I would feel that that's going to be the case. So sometimes you don't see the dynamic growth. But it also, it can be a very strong, stable business if you architect it right.
And I think you've worked pretty hard in establishing that entire system. And I think you have a background in systems thinking, definitely. These are really complex challenges. I always get reminded of this example of the Janicki processor from Bill Gates Foundation. And the Janicki processor basically purifies water, and they're trying to make clean water cheap and accessible in poor countries such as in sub-Saharan Africa. But it turns out the solution to doing that involved a lot more changes. Like they had to set up an industry that tackled a lot of other problems before they could have tackled the water issue. And just like that, I think education is no outlier in this. It's so complex, it's so integrated, so many different parts of our it's just the institutional systems that it can definitely take a long time. But you've put in the time, and I think it reflects you say we are on an inflection point. I'm really hopeful about that. That's true. I think people in this group and anyone else who will be listening to the session, please do look at Knowledge Platform's website. Get in contact with Mr. Mahboob. He is easily approachable on LinkedIn, and you can contact him. I think one of the key things that uh, I've kind of found a pattern in the questions that have been coming in this chat is that people just want to collaborate, and I think that is I find that is a very positive response that people get involved highly with this. I think everybody has seen the value of it, and why would anyone want to reinvent the wheel when we have someone who's innovated in this within Pakistan? And not only here, you've cracked markets like China. You've entered that market as well, and I think from here, you can this project will only go up. A final thing, and I always ask this from every person I moderate. How has been your personal journey? How does a lawyer end up in the educational space? What motivated you to get here?
Well, lawyer is kind of easy because nerdy kind of work anyway. You have to read a lot and write a lot. So going into education was a very easy switch. But for me, reading books was very important, and somehow I've been influenced a lot by books. I was doing corporate law and first Pakistani partner in a major US law firm in New York. And I read Paul Kennedy's Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. And in that they had a chart which said that India and China had 23% and 32% of world industrial output in 2750. And then it had dropped to a combined total of 8% by 1900. So I said, we are reverting to the mean. I want to be part of that. So I convinced my firm to open up in Asia, and they had sent me as head of the firm to Asia. Then I was reading Alvin Toffler, Future Shock. And, I said, we are entering a new information age. So I want to be part of that. So I quit my law practice and I jumped in. So I feel if you are passionate about something, you will be able to move forward. And I tell you, the level of personal satisfaction I get, seeing a kid, seeing a teacher in Pakistan, working with people like Iftikhar Saab, I've learned a lot from them, and it gives you a lot of energy and a lot of positive momentum, So education is a fantastic field to work in because it's positive and it's, people are committed to it and so on. So it's easy. There was, I went to Konya where, to Rumi's Tekke, and there was a little thing that on Friday he'd first say the Friday prayer, and then they'd read the Quran, and then they'd start reading the Masnavi. And he said, before he'd start reading the Masnavi, he'd say, to work, the path to holiness is never difficult. To work with holiness is always easy. So actually, for me, working education is easy. It's a pleasure. So it's not, for me, the risk would have been staying as a lawyer and working in things where I'm not happy.
Yeah. I'm really glad. I think being here in the Bay Area, I see all these startups in tech and all the big giant Google and Apple and Facebook, and all of them are here. And I see a lot of Pakistanis wanting to join these companies and just, somehow help Pakistan back. But, I really think the people who are in the best interest of our country, they're grassroots startups. They're startups that are from Pakistan, led by Pakistanis. What are the people? There's a higher emotional incentive for them than any other corporation. Help will not come from outside. I really don't think so. I think we should stop relying on the savior complex. That someone's gonna come and save us. It's not. And I think more people who would want to get into space where technology is being leveraged in the best way possible for the people of Pakistan in a way that I think you understand how all people are and what they actually need. What are the needs of it? I think more people should definitely be part of this revolution. And I hope you best of luck for your business. I hope it grows. I hope the whole industry grows. I hope Pakistan and everything that we've faced historically, I hope we can overcome the challenges, the burden that comes from that. And I hope that every kid in Pakistan gets an opportunity to just have a shot at life, not have to work, doing hard labor or serving tea in quotas. I hope we can achieve a vision or future of Pakistan where everybody is having a good chance. And I think, thank you so much, Mr. Mahboob, for this wonderful talk and presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all your time. God bless you and wish you the best for the rest of your weekend and your life ahead, and hope we have all a chance to connect. The email address is knowledgeplatform.com.pk, and I think you can give my email address. The web address is that, and you can give my email address, and anyone who wants to contact will be happy to do so.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I apologize that we've gone overtime, but I think it was worth it. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mahboob. I'll talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.